Good afternoon. My name is Neville Mikey. I'm the CEO of Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal. Welcome to this webinar focusing on infrastructure. This process and all these webinars are championed through the leadership of our Honorable MEC Nomusa Dube-Ncube, who has really guided us in ensuring that we put together a plan that would specifically look at post-COVID and how we assist companies. And this panel is specifically focusing on infrastructure development within the province of KwaZulu-Natal. With these few words, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our MEC, who will then give us a words of welcome and the purpose and objectives of this platform. Honorable MEC, welcome, and I hand over to you.
Hi, good afternoon to you, Neville. Good afternoon to all our panel members. I hope I'm audible enough, and thank you very much for this opportunity to address you as well as all the other members. I hope we are going to have yet another fruitful discussion with all the industry players. Really, the purpose of this webinars is for us as the department, but also is for us as a province of KwaZulu-Natal through the leadership of our Premier in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the government of KwaZulu-Natal, the Premier Zikalala, and the whole of the government, is to see how do we ensure that we get the economy to get back to be able to respond to the challenges that we have been experiencing, that we are still obviously experiencing even now. Clearly, the focus this afternoon and the lineup of the speakers will obviously unpack the subject matter, and I'm not going to go through that. But for us as the department, we want to come up with practical plans that we want to put in place to support the industry to be able to create very much needed jobs, but also to ensure that the red tape that we normally see hindering the growth in the economies, but also hindering the coming into the industry, a number of players, including the small businesses, the medium enterprises, for them to come into the industries. We want to ensure that there is no barrier for those small and medium enterprises to come in into industries. But also we know that the informal economy, but also the small businesses, are one that are likely to ensure that we speedily recover this economy. We know that particularly big businesses have got a lot of small and medium enterprises within their value chain, and those are the people that are also suffering more during this difficult time. And I know that a number of big businesses are also very much aware of that, and they are willing and they're ready to ensure that industries begin to run so that all those small economies, all those businesses can also start to benefit more from the economy. So we have put together academic institutions of higher learning, young people with a lot of innovations, the industry players, specialists in various industries, as well as the entrepreneurs, because we do believe that a lot of entrepreneurs with very good ideas that are out there who know what are the issues that really could bring us even quicker to where we want to get to. But also the issue of the utilization of technology really needs to be something that is in the forefront of the recovery of the economy, because you've seen even now during the lockdown how the ICT as well as the utilization of the ICT has played a much important role in the economy, and it's going to continue to be like that. But then how do we take advantage of that economy? Because it could easily be a growing economy, it could easily be a job creator, the ICT economy. How do we then ensure that we open that economy? How do we support that economy? How do we ensure that those small and medium enterprises that want to play a role in that economy come in, and there are no barriers into that economy? So Neville, I would not dwell much, but the long and short of my introduction of this discussion is that we want to see the economy of KwaZulu-Natal getting up and working for the people of KwaZulu-Natal and working for the country of South Africa. We want to see everybody participating in the economy. We want to see localization now becoming the name of the game. It's about time that we take advantage of localization. We've been talking about it for many, many years, and now we think it is an opportunity that has been given to us, that localization really become something that is practical, something that is doable, something that all of us need to start working on, putting measures in place to localize our economy. Each and every one of us need to be asking ourselves whether anything that we are consuming, is it something that is produced locally, or it is something that is coming from outside of our borders? Is it something that is produced by people that we even know? Is it something that is value for money? Is it something that is growing our economy? Is it something that is promoting job creation for our small and medium enterprises? Is it something that is growing our township economies, our big businesses? Because a lot of our big businesses that we have in KwaZulu-Natal even mostly recognized internationally than having some of those businesses being our businesses of choice here in KwaZulu-Natal. And those are some of the things that we really need to seriously look at and say, how do we make our industry work for us as people of KwaZulu-Natal? How do we ensure that the value chain of those industry talk to the local people, and local people do not have barriers into coming into those value chain of all those industries that we have in our country or in our province. And for us as the department, we're working very hard to open those markets for our people. We're working very hard in terms of ensuring that the reskilling as well of our people, because there's going to be a lot of a need for reskilling, a repurposing of a number of businesses, recalibrating a number of businesses, re-strategizing and re-looking at our business processing, and making sure that it responds to the challenges that we are facing today. It cannot be business as usual. It's going to be business unusual that we need to get used to, but we need therefore to say, how do we move together? How do we support one another? And we are here as the government of KwaZulu-Natal to give that support to the industry. So that is by way really of saying we are committing ourselves to strengthen the tripartite relations between the organized business, between the organized labor, between the organized civil society, between the organized informal businesses, small and medium enterprises. We are here to ensure that municipalities work for our communities. We are here to ensure that as government, we seek to integrate the previously marginalized businesses into the mainstream of the economy by localizing those businesses. We seek really to ensure that we facilitate the development of our regional innovation systems that will support the industries operating within and outside of our province. So that's why we are here. We are here to seek solutions. We're not here to lament. We're not here to complain, but we're here to look for solutions together, to find solutions that will work come next week, which is the fourth, we are in the fourth phase of the lockdown, which is going to be another phase for us to start the economy. What is it? It's going to be a phase for us as businesses to operate. How do we then begin to operate come the 1st of May, come the next week? How do we then operate as various industries? And that's what we want to talk about. Thank you, Neville.
Thank you very much, Honorable MEC, for those words of encouragement and exactly what the purpose of these sessions are. And MEC, just taking on your leave, I think the directive and the marching orders that you've given us are clear and articulate, basically for this team to ensure that they can formulate a workable action plan, cascaded into the immediate, which is really the short-term phase of implementation of phase 4. And as you've indicated, no long PCs, etc. It's practical steps that are being looked at. And the purpose of this team really is to unpack that at an infrastructure perspective, and then to also look at medium to long-term plans, but in the immediate really is to drive that short-term practical implementation plan to ensure that we look at the economic impact caused by COVID-19 crisis, as well as how through the infrastructure platform, we're able to have key deliverables as quickly as possible. MEC, if I can move on, if you'll allow me, and thank you, MEC, for your marching orders and the clear directive that you've given us and the actual purpose of the session. I will now introduce the panel members. I will start with the first panel member is Mr. Jarendra Reddy, who will be speaking about leveraging infrastructure as an economic stimulus. Jarendra, I will hand over to you now.
Great, thanks, Neville. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. So I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me and see what's being presented. Neville, Steve, are we good to go?
Good to go.
Great. I think firstly, good morning, MEC, the session chair, my fellow panelists, and everyone listening in. And I hope that you, your families, and colleagues are all well and safe during these unprecedented times. And when we hear the words economic recovery, there's an immediate gaze to government, and it's seen as solely a government responsibility. So without taking responsibility away from government, I believe the economy belongs to all of us. We all have an equal role to play in its recovery. That's both private as well as the public sector need to work together to not just recover, but we actually need to do better than we ever have done in the past. So from my experience around the globe in both developed as well as emerging economies, the best way to describe the challenge of our time that both governments as well as businesses face is really about balancing short-term relief with long-term sustained prosperity. So what I'll do is I'll first start off by talking a little about the state of the construction industry in KZN. I'll explore infrastructure as an economic stimulus, talk about the need for diversity of projects. I'll discuss how we actually will go about balancing short-term relief with longer-term prosperity. And I'll touch on really what the pipeline of opportunity looks like before talking about some practical next steps. So really looking at the state of the construction industry, and I think firstly we should recognize that the KZN economy in the recent past is fortunately diversified quite significantly. But construction still remains a very significant contributor in terms of gross value add. And it makes up just under 5% when we look at the 10-year average. And when we look at things from an employment perspective, we observe that employment within the construction sector in KZN tends to be a bit more volatile, a bit more cyclical in comparison to what's happening.
Right.
Sorry, Neville?
Please proceed, Jarendra.
Okay. So it's a lot more cyclical and in comparison to the national average. And a lot of that's attributed to the need to have a constant supply of projects that are feeding the market. And it's going to require quite a lot of effort to create 23,000 entirely new jobs just to recover to what the 10-year high has been. And especially when we look at it within the context of forecasts for what employment looks like within the construction sector for 2020. So I know while right now a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals, we're all hurting at the moment, and I think what's really important to keep in mind is that the pandemic is temporary, and while it's difficult now, we have to imagine ourselves in a time beyond the pandemic, and we have to recognize that the world that emerges beyond COVID-19 will undoubtedly be different, and just how different really depends on the choices that all of us will make during the height of the pandemic, immediately after, as well as in the longer term. And we have to work really hard to fundamentally reconfigure our thinking, and I like the word that the MEC is recalibrate, and that's needed so that we can identify the things to do that will genuinely make our province as well as the world around us fundamentally better than it's ever been before. So looking at infrastructure as an economic stimulus, and really when we talk about infrastructure, it's the go-to solution for governments around the world, and for a couple of reasons. And firstly, it definitely creates jobs. It drives up what we refer to as aggregate demand, which is a demand for finished goods. And it also creates capacity in terms of roads, in terms of railways, in terms of ports, and so on, which ultimately go towards improving the productivity of the economy, but also the efficiency in terms of overall production, and goes towards lowering the overall cost of production. And these goals are achieved provided that there's always alignment with the bigger picture. So that we can't just, and I know there's always a tendency to say, let's go after the shovel-ready projects. We need to not just chase down the projects that are easily implementable because they're easy to implement. We need to really go after those projects that are a lot more difficult to get going, but will actually put us in a much stronger position, not just now, but also into the future. And while we do that, we have to balance financial viability with generating much wider economic benefits. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So just moving towards project categories. And when we talk about project categories, I think it's really important that we recognize the need to have a diverse portfolio of projects. And we need this diversity because some projects will be able to provide very short-term stimulus, while others will enable a more durable future economy. And so when we talk about project categories, we talk about new capital. So that means, acquiring entirely new assets, opening up entirely new development. We can talk about capital expansion. That's really adding more capacity to existing roadways, improving the port, and improving water, sanitation, infrastructure capacity. And then very importantly, we can't ignore, I think, something that's very important, which is really maintenance expenditure. And I think, this is an area that really ensures that our assets remain good and are sustainable in the long term. And they have the ability to create jobs, quite immediately, and especially jobs that contribute towards, positioning us for success, well into the future. And so we can't underestimate the importance of maintenance expenditure. So now coming to the question, how do we balance, short-term relief with long-term prosperity? And, there are three, really well-known, go-to strategies that are employed by governments and businesses and organizations around the globe. And, it starts off firstly by, making better choices on what to implement. It's about value engineering, what's to be implemented. And I think what's really important for us is being efficient in delivery. So I will run through how we would go about making better choices and talk, in more detail about what does it mean to deliver efficiently. So when it comes to making better choices, we really want to invest in, and there's infrastructure that you can invest in that will basically create a lot of employment in the short term, but the asset itself doesn't really generate a lot of secondary economic benefits. In other words, the infrastructure project itself creates value, but the multiple is pretty low. It doesn't open up new development. It doesn't support new industry and manufacturing clusters. And I think the latter is really what we're after. So we really want to invest in the things that will recalibrate, reposition, and reinvigorate the economy. And to do that, we've got to think about things in two important dimensions. I think firstly, in terms of impact, and secondly, in terms of how that impact relates to the investment. And, for example, we would really want to, in the very short term, focus on those projects and infrastructure programs that can deliver high impact for relatively low investment. And that's because we can get those things done really quickly. But we don't want to lose sight of, projects that require high investment, as well, but also deliver high impact. And we still need to put enough energy into getting those projects, those programs, implemented and to market. And we obviously want to rethink or defer, projects that deliver a low impact for a low investment, and most certainly want to avoid, those initiatives that really don't deliver the impact that we desire for a very high investment. And so what I'll do is I'll unpack what we mean by impact, and I think that's really the important part of the conversation. Many organizations, many governments can really think about how they calibrate their own definition of impact. However, from our sort of local context, I believe that immediacy is pretty important. There's no point having a pipeline of projects, a pipeline of infrastructure delivery that's only going to happen in a year or 2 years' time. So immediacy is really important. I think financial viability as well, but it's about looking at financial viability and the balance of that against the wider socioeconomic benefits that can be generated. So we have to look at things like job creation. We can spend an awful lot of capital on a project that costs a lot, but a big component of that project may require the procurement of plant, equipment, and so on from foreign shores. And that doesn't allow for that investment or the cash to circulate within our local economy. Instead, you end up spending an awful lot on a foreign market when our currency is not at its strongest. So we've got to look carefully at the value chain of each of the projects itself. And the MEC already touched on maximizing local sourcing and spending. And I think while we're doing all of these things, we can't ignore the importance of tackling climate change, environmental sustainability, maximizing SME involvement, but also recognizing that some projects, and Hamish and some of the other panelists will talk about it later on, in terms of the infrastructure that's actually needed to unlock other types of development, which in turn gets manufacturing going and all of the other economic sectors going. So moving on to efficient delivery, and I've got the statement up there that says efficient implementation is a cornerstone to minimizing wastage of resources and bringing about immediacy of impact. And I think this is an area that we've got to work hard at. We have to really streamline procurement. We have to reduce the lead times for procurement to bring projects faster to market. we also got to think about alternate delivery models. We've got to think about design and construct instead of going through the process of, traditionally procuring, built environment professionals to prepare designs and so on. And that, takes time to even procure them. And then we take even more time to procure, a contractor or a constructor. So, we really need to think about how we can, merge those, procurement events from 2 to 1. We also, need to configure those in a way that encourages innovation to come through from industry, because that way you can start to optimize your construction costs versus trying to, your total infrastructure cost versus trying to incrementally optimize, across that entire, project delivery chain. And then I think lastly, but very importantly, it's about the regulatory approval processes. And I think there are a number of, catalytic projects that are currently caught up in a number of, regulatory red tape. And it's impacting both public sector as well as private sector initiatives. And I think right now, there's an absolute need to resolve those issues and ensure that approvals can happen a lot faster without, compromising sound decision making. And I honestly believe that that's a possibility. We achieved it during the lead up to the 2010 World Cup. So there's no reason why we can't have that big match temperament now and, deal with these burning issues. So moving on to, really what that pipeline of opportunity looks like. And, I titled the slide, time to market. And I think that's really, really important. And, right now it's easy for the perception to be out there that the country's in lockdown, all the opportunities have evaporated. And I think the reality is that the opportunities haven't evaporated, they've just paused. And we've got to, remember that, there is a whole bunch of opportunities that will get going again. And, my fellow panelists will talk about some of those. And, for now, what we've done is focused on initially just provincial and SOE initiatives. We are having, a follow-up looking into municipal as well as, private sector initiatives. But the logic behind this is that, what a lot of, big spending is often initiated by government. And government right now can almost make an immediate sort of impact, especially when we look at the fact that there's almost 30 billion rands worth of opportunities that are live and ready to be restarted as soon as the lockdown is eased. And normally what happens is government tends to lead that cycle, and the private sector often tends to follow. And they in turn start to mobilize their investments, and hopefully that's done in a very coordinated way, with government. And that's really what starts to get the cash circulating, in the economy. The big opportunity is really those projects that sit just beyond, our, short-term horizon. It's some of those projects that are, caught up in the red tape, some of those projects that need a bit more development work to get them shovel ready. The key focus over the next coming days, coming weeks has got to be about unlocking those, reprioritizing them. And reprioritizing doesn't mean cutting projects. If anything, we need to actually, accelerate our spend, provided that we are wise in doing so. So, therein lies, I think, the real effort and the real opportunity is to bring a lot of those, major catalytic initiatives, forward through some very smart, thinking and having a very efficient delivery focus. So I'd like to, conclude by, talking about some, next practical sort of steps that we can, that we need to look at. And it's really about recognizing the urgency. And I think while there's a definite urgency, we've got to have urgency with both thoughtfulness as well as practicality. And so, really the progression of the lockdown levels and its easing will influence, how infrastructure delivery and spend will restart. We need to work really hard on building that comprehensive list of projects, and in particular, unlocking a lot of those catalytic projects that really sit just beyond our very short-term horizon and bringing those forward. And that really comes down to making some good choices as well around both impact and investment. We have to also recognize that there are some very real fiscal constraints, and I don't think there's any government in the world right now that isn't facing some of those challenges. And so we've got to be really creative about funding approaches to to many of these projects and programs. And it's going to take very much a collaborative effort between public sector entities as well as the private sector. And there's got to be alignment in terms of how infrastructure invests in relation to how we get other economic sectors going, like healthcare and pharmaceuticals, like education, like advanced manufacturing. We really need to maximize those secondary economic benefits. And then lastly, it's about dealing with the red tape issues, really getting rid of those, streamlining procurement, expediting the regulatory processes. And it's going to take really extraordinary interventions to start to change the game in this space. So I think really on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your attention and hand it back to Neville.
Thank you very much, Narendra, for that presentation. I think it's from the industry perspective. I think you've really touched on key items, and some of them actually came out from the red tape session that we had, particularly related to the SCM processes of government and ensuring that there's a delivery of projects rather than a delay and a delay and a delay, because that definitely causes serious challenges to obviously stimulating the economy. Reprioritization of projects, which is also quite critical. Then we just deal with those projects that are high impact rather than smaller ones that are not going to be high impact projects. The registering of catalytic projects within the province, I think that's also quite important, as well as the relationship between the private and public partners. Obviously, these are just some of the highlights from your presentation, which must be taken into account as part of our process. And I think they are clear, solid, and direct in terms of what would be required of this team. Thank you. I see some questions coming in. We'll deal with the Q&As a bit later, but let me just swiftly go on to a presentation by Sanral Dumsani Gambinde, who's the regional manager, as well as Ravi Ronnie. So I'm not sure who's on to then take us through the presentation.
Hello, Neville. I'm not sure whether Dumisane has joined. He did say he's joined the meeting just to say a few introductory remarks.
Yeah, I see him at the bottom. Dumisane is in, but he hasn't responded, so I would suggest you proceed. Okay.
Okay, I'm on. It's just that my video can be a bit cumbersome there.
Okay.
But I'm on. Yeah, thank you very much, and greetings to everyone and Honorable MEC. This indeed are very difficult times for the entire country. But I think with the drive that KZN has, we're gonna actually, I think this time we'll actually thrive as the province. The slides that we have prepared here will indicate to you that we had a plan, and that plan started some, call it, couple of years back, and this is coinciding. The COVID-19 is coinciding with the time when we're actually ready to put the plan on the table. So it's actually quite a lot of money that we're aiming at generating a lot of opportunities, as well as turning around a lot of businesses and providing enough opportunities for small businesses and big businesses in KZN. Ravi will go through it in greater details, but I'm gonna stand next to him in terms of giving the support if there are questions at the end of the session. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dumi. Okay, so I know we're limited for time, so we have to keep it fairly brief. So I'll just go through them. Okay, so yeah, just in terms of an overview, again, just for time limitations, I'm not going to go into too much detail of who we are, Sandra, and what we do. But just to say, we the custodians of the National Road Network within KZN. I'll just touch on what the network is and what the pavement condition is and what our expansion plans are, because I think it's important, because Jarendra did say you're going to have a mix of maintenance together with the capital expenditure in terms of the expansion of infrastructure. And then I'll take you through, which is more important, I think, in the current conditions we're in, what are really the nuts and bolts of what impact we're going to make to the industry in terms of job creation and in terms of small and big business involvement on our projects. And then lastly, just to touch on these opportunities that are there for labor and for small businesses. Okay, this is the National Road Network, or the overall South African road network. Again, not to touch in detail, but what you see in the different colors, blue is the National Road Network, and then specifically within KZN, you can see it's quite a substantial road network, which is a mix of national roads, provincial roads, and local roads. And the importance of this slide is then just to show the extent of the national road network within KZN. So roughly, in terms of our funding, we get funding from the Fiscus, which is for our non-toll roads, which is around 950 kilometers, as you will see on this slide. And then we also have toll roads, and the toll roads are self-funded through the toll fees that we generate. So we generally go to the market and raise bonds so that we can do the capital works, and then over a period of time, we pay back those loans through the generation, through the revenue generation from the toll fees we collect. So overall within KZN, as you will see there, it's just around 1,300 kilometers of national road network. Okay, this slide again just shows you the overall pavement condition within the national road network overall, but again specifically within KZN, as you'll see in these different colors. So you'll see within KZN, our national road network is actually in good to very good condition by the colors you see between the green and blue. There are some areas that you'll see that are in a fair condition, which is highlighted in orange. And so that's in terms of our phasing and planning we have what we need to do. So generally our projects over the next number of years is more looking at the capital expansion more than the maintenance or in terms of the existing pavement condition. So this slide shows you again the road network and in terms of our expansion plans for the national road network. Again, this is an holistic plan for the entire country. But again, if you focus this within KZN, you'll see what we're specifically looking at is the north-south corridor, which is the N2 corridor from south of Durban all the way north towards the Dubai Trade Port, and then looking further north from Richards Bay all the way up towards Emelo, past the Mpumalanga border into the Mpumalanga province. So just on the KZN side, and then on south of Durban as well, in terms of the new Wild Coast Highway that's already under construction in the Eastern Cape side, to provide a much shorter link between KZN and the Eastern Cape. We've got a few projects on the southern side in terms of expansion on the existing network to link up to the new Greenfields highway that's under construction on the Eastern Cape side. And then together with the N2 around Durban, We've also got the expansion of the N3 network from Durban all the way to Pietermaritzburg. And then what you see in red there on the N3 is from Sedara to Gauteng, we have a toll concessionaire which is under operation for the last 20 years, and it's another 10 years to go with that concession. And they've also got a pipeline of projects over the next number of years. So just in terms of the projects currently under construction, prior to lockdown, we had we've actually got about 4 projects in KZN, but the one north, Richards Bay, Tunzini to Richards Bay, is substantially completed, and there's very little left to do on it. It's just the finishing off, so it was not included on this slide. And similar with Hammersdale Interchange as well here on the N3. It's substantially completed, with just more or less finishing off. So these 2 projects you see here, so they were suspended now during the lockdown period, and then we need to get going now as of Monday. So we're going to lift the suspension, and there are some restrictions and challenges, starting up the projects again. But we're going to have discussions with the various service providers, the contractors, the consultants that supervise these projects, to see where some of these challenges are. And these could be, on a number of different areas. It could be the issues around perhaps material supply, whether it's from asphalt, whether it's concrete, whether it's aggregate, and so forth. Because some of these sectors as well, there have been some restrictions placed on them in terms of starting off in this level 4 we're going through now. So overall, these 2 projects, they're in the order of about 100 million. So we have started them, as I said, just prior to lockdown a few months before. So definitely in terms of job opportunities, some of them we have appointed labor. There's still a lot more opportunities still to be created. And then similar with the SMMEs involved, generally the minimum 30% applies on all our SANRA contracts. So you'll see, up to 30 million of opportunities to be created then for these 2 contracts under construction. Then more extensively in the second phase, and then what Dumisani has also indicated earlier on, even prior to this whole issue with the COVID-19, we had a plan already for the N2, N3 SIP2 corridor in terms of our expansion plans. And it couldn't come at a better time now that we're in this current position where we need to create the jobs, where we need to get the SMEs involved, going forward. So we have a number of projects that we've already went out to tender on. So you'll see in the first section here, in terms of maintenance of the network. So this is more preventative maintenance, where we are providing new layers on the existing pavement surfacings we have. You'll see there's a number of projects on this top section here that we have already. So these have gone out to tender. We're busy with the tender evaluations, and just this last one there on the bridge repairs, where we still need to go out to tender for the contractor. Then on the capital expansion side of things, you'll see again about eight of these projects we already gone out to tender for construction. And you'll see they're substantial in size. For example, you'll see on the N3 expansions, you've got EB Kluter, Komashu, on the N2, Komashu to Umsloti, and then on the N3, there's a few there, and these are, if you add them up, they're actually a few billion in value. So yeah, so there's a number we're already out on tender, as you see there, and then there's a few we're still going to go out to tender for construction, and there's a few we already completed the design. We're busy reviewing the tender documentation. And then what you'll see on the slide, we put dates in terms of estimated awards, in terms of our internal procurement process, by when we envisage these to be awarded to the contractors. And then we will see there's about a 3-month period between the award and by when we actually physically commence with the work. And in that period, in our SANRA projects, we allow for finalization of the FME database, the labor database, engaging with the small contractors to tender for these subcontract packages that we're going to put in place. And by doing it like this, we're trying to make sure as well we get as many as of the small contractors who are interested and wanting to be involved in our SANRAL projects, that we put them into the database and we give enough opportunities out there so that we get as many small contractors tendering for the various packages of work. What we've also shown here is just the estimated number of jobs we're going to try and create. And we've put some spend there in terms of estimates for labor and some spend in terms of 30% for subcontractors. So on this slide, the summary at the bottom, you'll just see, so in this phase, between the next 6 to 12 months, in the order of about 16.3 billion rands worth of work to put out to industry. And so these projects vary in size from, whether it's a year to 2 years, some projects are up to 3 years, and then the bigger, large projects are around 4 to 5 years. So I said we'll go out to tender or make appointments within the next 6 months, and then there'll be a phase now during the construction over the next 3 to 5 years where all of this money and the jobs will be created, as well as providing the opportunities for the small to medium contractors. So in the order of 1.3 billion for wages, and in the order of just under 5 billion for the SMME companies. Okay, and then the next one, just to also highlight, we do have 2 projects where we've completed aspects around the designs. So some of the challenges with these, specifically these 2 projects, the one up north of Richards Bay, Komsan, is just an issue around tribal land, and I know we are engaging with the ITB regarding the tribal land, and we're trying to set up an MOU with them. But obviously, if we still do have challenges, we're assuming via the MEC we'll get some assistance how we can try and move the project forward. And similarly, on the R102, the national road from Shishlove all the way to Mozambique border, we've got a project there. We've got some issues with state land, with the municipality, and we are engaging with them. And just to say, if we do have ongoing challenges with that, I'm hoping through the MEC we'll get some assistance on that. And then for these 2 projects as well, if you can get them on board as quick as possible. Again, similarly, you'll see just under 600 million rands in terms of construction value, 500 jobs to be created, similar about 172 million towards SMEs, and then also 46 million towards wages for labor. And in future projects going beyond this, I mean, this is quite an expansive list, and I'm not going to go through it in detail. But what I've highlighted here, again, on the top section, you'll see the projects in terms of preserving our network. So these are more for our pavement layers and trying to provide, whether it's a rehab or trying to provide some form of surfacing seal over some sections of the network. But the second portion then, which is the capital projects, again, you'll see an expansive list here, and it actually goes over onto the next slide. And then together with that, what we've highlighted here in orange is just to show you some of our toll projects. And again, there's substantial spending plan for these. The only issue now is just we're having some challenges in terms of trying to raise bonds on these toll projects. And we're trying different avenues through the New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank, and there's some other funding agencies we're looking at how we can raise the funds so we can then also start with these projects as well. Okay, and then this is just the second part of that same slide is the rest of these projects. And then we also have community development projects. And then just to say on community development projects, there's a lot of more emphasis placed on again, the small contractors and the local labor. So these projects, we try to maximize use of smaller contractors in terms of the CRAB levels of contractors. We generally target up to the 6s and maybe worst case 7s. So we give a lot more opportunities to the smaller contractors on these types of projects. Okay, and similarly, you can see the estimates we've put on these community development projects. But overall, the summary is, you'll see in the order of 53 billion shown for these projects now going forward. And as I said, these are phased over, beyond the 5 years, and some projects up to 10 years. And it just depends, if I go back to the previous slide, for example, if you see, you've got the Pietermaritzburg Ring Road at the bottom there, fourth from the bottom. So you'll see our estimate shows 10 billion for this ring road. And we in the stage now, we're finalizing the concept design and up to preliminary design. And what Jarendra was emphasizing earlier, and this perhaps is maybe a project we can look at as partnering private sector to see how we develop it, whether we do it as a design and construct project, or we go to the market and do it as a PPP project, public-private partnership project. So, these are some of the things we will also explore going forward. Just to wrap up in terms of small business EMEs and QSC opportunities. So generally under our projects, we have reservations where the smaller contractors up to 50 million, we give more of the exposure where they contract directly with SANRA. And then on the bigger projects beyond that, we allow for the 30% subcontracting. And these could be subcontractors who are actual contractors that are registered with the CIDB, or these could be suppliers that can also then contribute towards the contract participation goal. And then we look at specific preferencing areas and so forth. And then the bonuses offered and incentives where contractors can exceed beyond the 30%. Okay, and these are just opportunities we've listed here. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but again, to say on road construction projects, as we'll see from this list, there's vast majority of opportunities available for small contractors to get involved on SANRA projects. And then similar to for labor, generally it's between 6 and 8% of our contract values that's targeted towards labor. And from the previous tables I've shown, you can see that adds up to quite significant values on our projects. And especially on these large capital projects now, where we at with them, there's going to be huge opportunities for the local labor to get involved on our projects. Just in terms of constraints, which is what Jarendra also highlighted, perhaps something we can discuss, and he highlighted issues around procurement processes. Within SANRA, we're obviously trying to streamline those processes as well to in terms of the various committees we have, so that we try and fast track some of the, especially some of these large capital projects for these strategic projects, for example, under SIP2, where we're trying to, as quick as possible, get appointments made so that we can then be on the ground for the shovel-ready projects so we can start on them. Similar challenges, around land acquisition, but we're managing those so far, and then environmental authorizations as well. And luckily, I think for shovel-ready strategic projects, through the Infrastructure Act that was passed a few years ago, there's more shorter approval processes now to ensure we get the approvals, sooner than the normal NEMA processes we follow. And then lastly, I think there are some treasury restrictions or concerns and conditions regarding variations on projects, and which can become challenges when we do commence with some of the projects. Okay, thank you. I think that's all from our side.
Ravi, just to add on what you've just presented, yeah, that I think one thing that is key for us is that you've displayed that we are looking at the upper side of 20 or 15 billion in terms of expenditure for smaller businesses. So that alone, I think, within SANRA, it has created an atmosphere that this is something that we need to put it as a priority in terms of what are we just going to be living this as a normal subcontracting, or we're looking at it as a serious significant amount of money whereby we can build real businesses within the province. So with that, we have actually started to look at a multitude of things that we said that they will form a business case for us, whereby we are involving a lot of partners to assist, either be it creating formalized training, formalized mentorship, and all of them being funded under the mega projects that we are talking about. And with that, now we are bringing a whole lot of other upstream and downstream service providers that will augment the existence of the small businesses. a few workshops that we've had, we've seen that the small businesses are crying about maybe the accessibility of funding, accessibility of equipment, machinery, and so forth. So with that, we've put together a package that we want to give to smaller businesses as an offer to say, when you are involved in one of our projects, these are the support system that we're going to give to you. We're going to give you mentorship, a structured mentorship that looks at your business acumen, your skills, as well as your foremans and others, so that at the end of the project, you're not just walking away without us assessing you, that when you came in, who were you, how much skills we gave you, how much business acumen we gave you, and how much of other assistance required to make you a whole. So
Yeah.
that's the whole amount of money we put there. I just needed to make sure that message goes across. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that presentation. Yeah, most certainly I've got quite a few questions. I'm glad you've touched on, Dumisani, the issue of capacity building, but we'll speak a little bit more about that when we get to the Q&A. I think quite interesting to see the number of projects that are coming through. Yeah, but let's just see how we can get those projects on the way. There's key interventions that you've requested our intervention from, in terms of and also at the level of our MEC, in terms of unlocking those projects. I think they'll be creating a good opportunity for us once they're unlocked to actually realize some form of project implementation. Moving swiftly to our next presenter, Pat Docking from the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Transport. Pat, I'll hand over to you. Pat, are you online? I see you are online, but I don't see you speaking. You're just connecting your audio.
Well, I'm with Pat. I'm Stelo.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. He did tell me that he's having a bit of a problem with his connection. Yes.
Would you like to take over, please, Trelo?
Okay. Not a problem. Let me try sharing my screen. Can you hear me well? I know my video, I won't be able to see it, but
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me try sharing the screen. Can you see that?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, Honorable MEC, thank you for this opportunity. Well, with us is a Department of Transport.
Sorry, Stella.
Okay.
Could you please go into presentation mode? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is that fine? Yeah. Okay. For us, it's. I need to allude to this point that there's no sort of new investment that we sort of have. Like a stimulus package like Central, but it is important that we show what we were planning to spend in the financial year of 2021. Also noting that we had a lot of commitments that we had in the financial year 2019-2020. So we have a lot of those projects that are coming through to this financial year. And I feel that also after this, we feel this is an opportunity for us to reprioritize, like what Jerry said, our future projects, because we are at the stage of actually committing additional projects going forward. So our presentation is going to be very brief because it's going to look at high level nature of investment, what you call it, budget allocations as per nature of investment, and then looking at the distribution per district, and then also looking at basically how many projects we had that were active before the lockdown. And yes, so let's jump to it. As we know, the network length in KZN, blacktop, it's about 8,723. Gravel is quite a lot, about 24 kilometers. And I think that's where mostly the challenge is at the moment, and we've seen that. And I think that's where our discussion should be, especially with other sector departments, to say the challenges that all the other sector departments have had in terms of access into these communities when it comes to road infrastructure, all of that. It will be very interesting to realign our plans in trying to sort out those, mainly, especially to be able to reach communities that had problems with their access. Make an example. If we look at infrastructure budget allocation as per nature of investment, as we say, we sort of invest a lot at the moment on maintenance repairs. With Treasury sort of way of classifying projects, rehab is on its own. Although we can call it a maintenance activity, but it's on its own as refurbishment and rehabilitation. And I think for us, what's driving us to allocate this much on rehab is the condition, the network condition. Where the last condition assessment we had, or that we did, we saw that our condition, the roads that are poor to very poor, they were sitting at over 56%, which was a concern, and we need to address that. But I think this is an opportunity to actually also review that after the pandemic and all of that. Maintenance repairs, 2.6 billion. Upgrades, 1.5. And I think this is also very sort of concerning, because we are still addressing commitments that we had 10, 15 years ago in terms of upgrades, and we're still trying to finish that. So as a department, we need to look at which way of reprioritizing that, so that our investment can stimulate the economy of the province. So yeah, so if I move forward, yeah, similar slide. This is actually the activities that we do per objective, and each objective. Our maintenance preventative, where we do a lot of regraveling, refill. We sort of try and prevent future or extend the lifespan of our project, of our roads, through the resale, which is the one portfolio we're trying to grow, because it's also contributing to the condition of our network. We haven't been doing a lot of resales, and that is now visible with the condition at the moment. And then you have your routine safety maintenance and special maintenance, and then the rehab. And this is the investment as per district. And then we have the distribution of our capital projects. So the presentation will be available to see the breakdown, but I think what's key for us is the ones at the end, where now we are talking about how many projects are going to be restarted after when the lockdown is lifted, and basically which projects are ready, that are already on the pipeline, basically ready to be issued with orders, or some projects that actually got orders in March, and then contractors could have established if there was no lockdown. And then we're looking at the value of the SMMEs, with those projects. And then these projects, I must highlight that it wasn't a maintenance project, because maintenance projects are normally done by the SMMEs in the department. These were the projects that were capital rehab projects, so projects that you call major projects in a department. As you can see, the distribution over the district, we have about 62 projects that are ready to commence as soon as the lockdown is lifted. But I must highlight that obviously we are still doing a risk assessment on some of the projects, to say which ones could restart immediately, and then which ones need a bit of a further assessment and all of that, and engagement with the communities for them to restart. Especially projects that were sort of LIC, so labor-based. Obviously everything changes in how we do things, especially with labor-based projects. You need to now sort of change the way you do things, especially with the social distancing and so forth. But we are looking into that at the moment. And then these are the projects I was talking about, projects that obviously as soon as the lockdown is lifted, they will commence. The other ones, these were active already, and these ones were ready to start. And then on top of these, it's the routine, not the routine, sorry, the maintenance projects that already we do have a framework contract. So as soon as the lockdown is lifted, we'll be able to start those and start the procurement process to actually start those. So for us, it's the plan that we already have, that we had as a department. But I feel that we still need to engage further on, say, which ones we can prioritize or open, especially projects that were on site. I would like to make an example, like the project at the border. I mean, since the lockdown, there's over about 50 cars that were stolen across the border. So that project was important that we restart immediately after the lockdown. So such projects, although that project, when it's on site, it's going to be full LIC in terms of laying down the panels and everything. But that's what I was referring to, where we need to look at and revise the health and safety of the project. So yeah, I think not wasting any more time, as a department, we are ready to start and stimulate the economy with the projects that are already in the pipeline, and projects that were already in active on site. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Sicelo. Yeah, quite interesting. I think it's important that we also look at how these projects are going to be able to assist us to stimulate the economy. I'm glad that you touched on the one that was at in the north of KwaZulu-Natal. I'm glad that one has already kicked off. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Hamish Erskine, the CEO of Dubai Trade Port, to take us through his presentation. Hamish, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Neville. My apologies. I was just trying to get the presentation up. Can you see that?
Yes, Hamish, if you can just go on slide mode, please.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Neville. Good afternoon, Honorable NMC and colleagues and participants. I'm just putting it on slideshow at the moment. So the focus of my presentation here is really to look at the infrastructure aspect of Dubai Trade Port. Obviously, as a special economic zone, we fully understand our role in some of the issues the MEC started with today, which is around localization and industrialization and the reindustrialization. And there's two ways that we approach it. The one is to provide the enabling infrastructure for the private sector to be able to fast track essentially investment ready projects and to focus sectors, especially those sectors that will be very responsive and hopefully growth sectors in the post-COVID environment, and to provide relevant and functional and highly productive and efficient spaces for those sectors and industries to grow. And then for us to work with our partners, Edtea, TIKZN, and others, DTI, to bring and attract and stimulate and maintain those investors in the zone. So today I'm really just going to focus, because of the nature of this, on the infrastructure side. Essentially, do we trade port?
Sorry, could you please go into presentation mode? Thank you.
I think I'm in presentation mode. Let me hang on a second.
Hamish, I'm going to share my screen. If you want to stop. Oh, no, that's perfect.
Is that it? Okay, cool. Okay. So essentially there are three major areas that we've focused on and are working on at the moment in both our 2020 to 2025 strat plan. The first is obviously Dubai Trade Port proper, the special economic zone, where Trade Zone 2 and Trade Zone 3 are priority. Obviously, Trade Zone 2, the major priority at the moment, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and then Agri Zone 2 and Dubai City. Following from that as our core, we're also beginning to look at what projects can be brought into being to begin the process of expanding the Aerotropolis, which was launched by the MEC last year, and we now need to start putting the next layer of supporting infrastructure in order to attract private sector investment. And then obviously very importantly, to focus on the south of Durban, both on the automotive supply park, but we've looked at it as a 4-phase development that actually opens up industrial sites in the south of Durban, new industrial sites in an area that doesn't have a lot of new industrial land available, and that proximity to the port is to really utilize the development of the automotive supply park to build infrastructures to support broader industry. So just to touch on that, that's just to give you a visual of the earthworks, which are now complete on Trade Zone 2, and will now be moving into the putting in of infrastructure as of the end of the lockdown. Agri Zone, we have now completed Agri Zone 2, and just to the left-hand side, we will now be opening up new platforms for Agri Zone 2 to expand more temporary, more accessible, definitely focused on emerging farmers and on smaller operators to be able to take advantage of the broader agri-zone development and the infrastructure that's there. And then Dubai City, where we have some projects linked to the innovation hub in particular, and other focused investments. So those are the three investment zones really at Dubai Trade Port itself. To give you a sense of where we are, in green are the two most immediate projects. Trade Zone 2, what we call municipal infrastructure, which is really roads, sewage, electricity, fencing, gatehouses, fiber optics, is essentially the contract is appointed. We're just waiting for one last regulatory approval, and we will move straight into construction. That's very important because we must think of that now as 50 new industrial hectares available as a response to the post-COVID environment, particularly in key sectors like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, electronics, and others. So we flagged that as a major priority to respond to the province's reindustrialization. The second green, as I've spoken about, is the earthworks and infrastructure for Agri Zone 2, also one that is far into the procurement process, and in fact is at the very end of that process. The other that is also at a very advanced stage is what we call Earth 650. That is a specialist built warehouse where we can accommodate in slightly larger premises than the mini factories, larger emerging companies and companies that are looking at the 2,000 to 3,000 square meter range. We can accommodate 4 or so of those companies for growth. So we really are trying to put infrastructure in the ground to be able to respond, because quite often that is the biggest delay on investment projects, is the identification of sites, of buildings. So we're trying to get ahead of that and put responsive infrastructure in. We then are looking at Dubai City, two stimulatory investments there, the multi-story parkade, which is part of our obligations under our planning, and then Block F, which is the Innovation Center, which is essentially an extension of our building. We then have some slightly longer term projects, Trade Zone 2 under the SEZ fund. We are looking to really get into sustainable energy solutions, off-grid energy production for our tenants, particularly pharmaceuticals. So we have designed and costed an energies utilities building, which we will then like to take forward in the next probably 18 months to get to construction. And then Support Zone 2 is a JV project. We're in a JV company in that respect with AXA, and that's essentially bringing new potential infrastructure back on this side of the airport adjacent to Dubai City. We are looking, and it's been spoken about, just some notes that I've got at the top. We're looking at forms of procurement that will essentially assure two things: speedier procurement, where the processes are collapsed, so more design and build type of bids, but also that give us value for money. And I think money is likely to be tight and short in this environment going forward, and we must find the most effective way of utilizing the funds that we have. Just to give you a sense of the outcome we are looking to achieve from that, for those investments, we've targeted in the 5-year period 11.5 billion Rand of private sector investment and over 7,000 jobs, both direct and direct temporary jobs. And so that is a combined number. It's roughly split 50-50, but that is our target for the 2020 to 2025. So that investment, we have a very clear objective of what we want to achieve with that infrastructure. Obviously, we want to go way beyond that if it is possible in this next 5-year environment. Moving on, I think it's well understood is the major project which then spins from there, the Durban Aerotropolis project. I think it's well known and well understood. It's certainly getting better known, understood. It will grow off the base skeleton infrastructure that is put in place to support it. It's corridors, so to speak. It's wastewater treatment works. So what we've done is we've looked at what the immediate and medium-term catalytic interventions from an infrastructure point of view we need to focus on. And these will fall into two categories. So there's some very immediate projects which we'll take forward right now. And those are the Tongaat Works functional upgrade that gives us better sewage handling capability on the northern part of the site, both AXA and Dubai Trade Port. And then really trying to get local public transport connectivity, interim public transport connectivity, to make our site more accessible to a broader range of work seekers and people working in the zone. And so that's something we've worked with Edtea municipality on. Then we move into bigger projects when I think it's been spoken about a bit today, where new ways of leveraging private sector money must be looked at. So there are 2 registered PPPs with one with Edtea, one that is with Edtea. The Umdloti Regional Wastewater Treatment Works is very important for the future growth of the north of Durban. It's essential, and that is registered as a PPP with National Treasury, and the feasibility work is underway. The other is an Edtea PPP, which is the public transport development spine between the airport and the center of town, and then the onward rail up to Maritzburg and beyond. And that is also, now going to move into the feasibility stage. And then the airport ring road, which really loops the first phase of the Aerotropolis together, which we need to look and explore partnerships with other provincial departments and entities to roll this infrastructure out. So that's just a glimpse of where we are. The Aerotropolis is a massive project. It has many phases, but these are the key interventions we've identified for it to maintain and keep momentum so that we can open up the housing, in particular housing and social infrastructure we need to go forward. I'll then move on to the automotive supplier park. That obviously that gives you a positioning of it. It's probably the only other piece of large-scale industrial land that will be opened up in close proximity to the Port of Durban. And I think as the province grows and as the port grows, as we come out of COVID, I think that's going to be quite an important factor as to how we grow, not just automotives, but other industries as well. At the moment, we are focused obviously on the first phase, which is what I'm showing you here. This has been designed, costed, it's far down the road in terms of its regulatory approvals. We're working in a joint team of Edtea, eThekwini, Toyota, and Dubai Tradeport to take it forward. We, as a collective, are looking at how, and Sunrail as well, as to how we share the development responsibilities, how we ensure that this impacts positively on the communities surrounding it, and is also part of a much broader opening up of this whole region of eThekwini, so that, let's say, for example, the interchange from Sunrail effectively opens up an entire new zone that serves a much wider range of uses than just the automotive supplier park. So automotive supplier park is 1A, and obviously a priority given the COVID environment. Obviously there can be any number of different impacts, but in essence, the role of this phases 1A, B, C, and D will be to offer for provincial government to be able to offer a truly world-class investment environment with close proximity to the port. To move on to the next slide, that just gives you a sense of the current costings of phase 1 of bulk enabling infrastructure. It is a large number, but it does include contributions of a number of parties. eThekwini as well, and their normal bulk services infrastructure. So it's a joint funding type of approach, so that all parties that will benefit, but also whose role and function it is to open up the economy for investment are involved. So at this stage, it is Dubai Tradeport, Sunrail, provincial government via DOT on certain infrastructure, but we are preparing this for, as we're trying to look at the most creative and cost-effective methodologies of funding any shortfalls on this project. But in order to do so, we need to show the impact and the viability. And to give you a sense of what we've looked at is the construction phase, the operational phase, and then the combination of those phases. And what you'll see is the generation of economic benefit of developing the ASP is significant in terms of the provincial economy. And if you go to the summaries, the combination of both construction and the operational phase are bringing in new business of nearly 23 billion rand into the province, a value-added activity of 9.5 billion rand income into the project. So we'd look at it as sustainability. It's not sunk cost infrastructure. There must be a return on the infrastructure to make it sustainable of 4.3 billion and over 50,000 new direct and indirect job opportunities. So it is a project which has immense potential for the capital outlay to have a hugely stimulatory effect. And we would look to really build partnerships, the investment aspect with TRKZN, with industry, to really drive this project forward so that we can achieve these impacts. I think it's quite critical to ensuring that we maintain the industrialization momentum. Obviously, there are huge opportunities in the capital. I think Sanral was speaking about it. We also at DTP are able to achieve well in excess of the 30% CPG goals on construction. And that really does, I think Sanral spoke very well and at length about it, but it does allow you to build and maintain medium-sized and small construction entities over the long term. And as we, especially with a project with 4 phases, you give a real opportunity for companies to build their businesses off the infrastructure and top structure opportunities that come with a project like this. So as I said, I've focused on the infrastructure level. Yeah, so that's really our focus.
Thank you so much, Hamish, for that presentation. Without any further ado, I'm going to also just immediately request Mgeni Water, Tami Hlongwa, to just take us through the presentation, the CEO of Mgeni. Tami, if you can take us through your presentation, please. Are you with us, Tami?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yes, I am with you. I'm just trying to share the screen. Sorry about that. Share screen. Okay. All right. Okay. So seemingly, I'm having some gremlins today because I had sent a presentation last night to the team. Let me just try again.
We can see it. Please proceed.
Tommy, I've got it. I will present for you. Just
let me
know.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can. Yes, I can see it. All right. So greetings, colleagues. Greetings to MEC Dube and Joyed. Greetings to everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Maybe as a briefing or as introductory remarks, we try to put together the presentation basically that highlights all the projects that we have in our implementation trajectory. After we had a discussion with Ubaba Msiwa as far as today's webinar. So it might not necessarily address all the issues that Umam Zwagele touched on as issues that she would like us to address. However, we are able to take questions and answers, and some of the issues I will touch on as I'm presenting without necessarily having a content talking to that on the presentation. Can I ask for the next page, please? Thank you. Basically, and the next page as well, please. Yes, thank you. Basically, the presentation, what we're trying to make was just to give the Infrastructure Coordinating Forum a sense of where we are as far as the water related projects are concerned, taking into cognizance the fact that water basically fuels the economic development as well as any future enhancements on the infrastructure on the ground, be it from human settlements all the way to road and rail network, including the harbors that we have. So we feel that water therefore needs to be at the center stage of the development, and we're trying as much as possible to ensure that wherever development happens, there is the fuel in the form of water available to meet the demands that will emanate from the development, when particularly when it comes to the development being ready for implementation or ready for actually execution, as it were. So we have looked at our projects that we have over the next 10 years. We have a number of projects that are in design and engineering stages, and that is approximately 18 billion rands of projects. We do have projects currently that are at the procurement stage, where procurement has started before COVID-19 interruptions. We're probably going to have to extend the tender validity period and just to allow fair processes as far as the tenderers being able to return the documentation. So that is sitting at about 700 million. And then we do have projects that are currently at the construction stage, sitting at about 2 billion. And then there are a couple of projects that are at a completion stage where we are commissioning. Next slide, please. In that regard, colleagues, we are not only looking at new projects, but we're also looking at how do we augment the current infrastructure to meet the future needs. If you look at the development that is currently taking place within the N3 corridor, particularly when you look at the tick junction of N2 and N3, we have to make sure that the infrastructure that we have is capable to meet the requirements of the growth that is currently taking place. So that's why then you will see that in augmentation, we will be spending over the next 5 years almost 6 billion rands, which is basically augmenting the infrastructure that we have to ensure that there's adequate supply, as well as there's adequate infrastructure to meet the demands that on the other side as it will take place. As you see, most of the projects are basically at an inception stage. That's why you'll see that between 2020 and 2021, the spending expected there is around about 700 million. However, going forward in F22 to F25, that's where we're going to have a lot of construction taking place, and that's where we're seeing projects a value of about 5.3 billion being spent. We are looking at some expansions. As you can see, that expansion is quite low in the sense that we are, I think there's a typo there, but we are looking at small values between F20, F21, and F25, just shy of about 500 million, mainly because at expansion stage, we're actually doing a lot of conceptualization and to see where can we basically find a niche in terms of supplying the new areas of supply. That's why then we are still conceptualizing, and we do not yet have final projects that are ready for implementation. We will be doing a lot of upgrades on some of the systems, as well as some rehabilitation, as some of the systems were built in the 1960s, some in the 1970s. It's high time that we look into them. Water infrastructure can carry you for 50 years if you've got good operating and maintenance, but beyond 50 years, you're actually sweating the assets. So as Babu Msiwa will always say that when you are still where I am, that we must not sweat the assets. So you want to make sure that you rehabilitate it such that it remains able to carry you as you are able to use it as well optimally. And lastly, we are looking at a lot of rural development projects within the province, where we are seeing a lot of infrastructure that will go to the areas that were previously unserved. And we are seeing 5.5 billion worth of apologies, I think I got lost a bit, but we will be having 5.5 billion rands worth of infrastructure in the rural areas, where we will be serving the areas that were previously unserved, particularly creating new water infrastructure, building dams, building new waterworks, as well as reservoirs and the pipe network to serve those areas. So in that regard, therefore, colleagues, in the next 5 years, we are looking at about 16.2 billion rands worth of projects that will be implemented within the next 5 years. And those are the projects in the next 12 months, we are looking at about 1.3 billion worth of projects. And then in the next 24 months, it's 2.1 billion plus 1.3 billion, which totals to about 3.4 billion worth of projects that will be implemented. Next slide, please. So colleagues, I will just touch on the two main projects that are basically giving us a bit of, if I can say, sleepless nights as the organization in charge of water delivery within the and the economic zone of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. We are right now exploring, looking at Umkomazi as a river that will supply the future needs of the province, particularly the economic zone, which is the entry corridor. That's why then there will be a lot of effort that will be spent in developing that river to become the river that is supplying the households as well as the industries. Currently, Umkomazi is mainly used by few farmers as well as Sapisaiko downstream towards the river mouth. And the water that is carried by that river, which is basically the third biggest river in the province, goes all the way to the sea. So we are therefore trying to then develop that river. That's why a lot of effort is going to be spent to develop the infrastructure as well as the dams on that river, which will augment which will augment the current supply zone that we have. Just to give you a bit of facts and figures, as I've said that due to time, we had to shorten our presentation. Currently, eThekwini is taking about between 940 million liters a day to about a billion liters a day. The projects that we are currently developing in Umkomazi will provide an additional 725 million liters a day of capacity, which means it will give plus minus 70% of the current supply that has been given to eThekwini. So this will give us enough capacity to make sure that we have enough supply on the entry corridor coming from all the way Moy River, Bofana area, down to Ugu, as well as up into Ilembe area, at least up until 2050. So it's very critical for us to make sure that those projects are successfully carried out. The one project that is currently ready for implementation is Uluam Komazi, where it will be the first step dam that will be built around about 15 kilometers from the river mouth, which is 15 kilometers from the sea. And that one will have an off-channel storage, which will be a dam next to the river, not in the river itself, because of the power of the flows during the rainy season. We do not think that we will be able to have comforts and confidence on the dam wall, particularly when you're having the rainy season. So we'll be doing an off-channel storage, which is normal in our continent. So there's been a lot of dams that are built in that way, and we'll also be doing the same. This one will give us a supply capacity of about 125 million liters to supply the entire Ugu as well as eThekwini, particularly the south coast of eThekwini. We'll then have another project in the future, which is Umkomazi Water Project. This will be the bigger Umkomazi, which will cut across many districts, as it will supply both Umkungundlovu, Umsunduze, parts of Ilembe, as well as eThekwini. That's a project that will give us another 600 million liters a day of capacity, where we'll have a dam in Bulwa, and then we'll have a 32-kilometer tunnel going under the mountains of Bulwa, coming through to Umla's Road on the N3. So that's the major project which we're doing hand in hand or combined between ourselves and TCTA. The total project value is 28 billion. Our side of the project is Umgeni Water, which is basically taking water from the tunnel, then treating it and then putting it into the pipelines to supply the areas that I've mentioned, will be about 7 billion, while the other 21 billion will be attributed to the work that will be done by TCTA, which will be a dam, tunnels in the main. Can I have the next slide, please? Colleagues, what we'll also be doing two big dams, which is Stephen Dlamini bulk water supply, as well as the Chwabini off-channel storage. Both those dams will be implemented within the next 5 years. We have finalized the designs working together with Department of Water and Sanitation. We are now at a stage where we're just finalizing the institutional arrangements between ourselves and the districts concerned, because Stephen Dlamini will be built in Bulwa, because the Bulwa Dam or the Mkomazi Dam that will be built on Mkomazi for the supply of eThekwini, Ilembe, and Msunduzi and Mgungundlovu that dam will not necessarily supply the people of Pulwa. So we have to have another dam called Stephen Dlamini Dam, which is on the tributary of Mkomazi River. That dam then will be the dam that will be used to supply all the areas all the way to Kwasane, as well as Ingwe, and meeting up with the areas of Itopo to supply that. That's the first dam, which will be about 1.2 billion. We are, as I've said, ready to go to tender. We're just finalizing institutional arrangements between ourselves, the department, as well as the district municipality there, which is Herikwana. The second dam, colleagues, will be Itwabeni off-channel storage. That's the dam that will also be building on the tributary of Umzimkulu River, which will then ensure that the current challenges that we're having around the Potchefstroom tourist area, as it were, is basically eliminated by having a nice storage that will be able to supply the whole area of this town of Potchefstroom, Machisini, and the surrounding, the Gamalake, all the way to the border of Eastern Cape and KZN in Mtamvuna. We will then be building that dam as well. That one is also ready for construction. We are just finalizing institutional arrangements as well on this one between ourselves and Uku. So these are the two dams, plus Mkomazi, the lower Mkomazi that I mentioned earlier. These are basically the three major dams. This will be the big projects that we'll be having in the province in the next year, in 12 to 24 months, taking off. And we're hoping that we will be able to finalize all the other requirements so that we can quickly kickstart that project. Because those are the projects, the nice thing about them, all three of them are in deep rural areas. So it will really go a long way towards assisting the eradication of poverty as well as unemployment in those areas. As we know that those are some of the areas that are struggling a lot as far as employment figures are concerned. Colleagues, I feel that just the second last slide, if we can go to that one, please. The other one is, just to conclude, colleagues, we, as I've said, that the projects, the 2 billion range of projects that are in construction were also put on hold due to COVID-19. We're hoping that on Monday, we will be able to kickstart those. We have had discussions with SAFSEC. We had a meeting even on Tuesday to see how do we minimize the misery for both us and the contractor, as well as any arguments and disputes, particularly implementation of GCC, so that they can take the sites quickly and all the other legalities can be resolved as we move in, so that we do not waste time. We are acknowledging that there has been a slow down in terms of the development for provision of water and infrastructure in the province. We also acknowledge that there has been moments, a certain degree of momentum lost. However, that's being implemented, we will then be able to quickly implement those projects, and we will have
yeah, Tammy, if you can just please round off. Jarendra, can you please mute your mic? Can I ask you, Jarendra, you have, and Pet Doc, can you please mute your mics? Thank you. Tammy, you've got 1 minute left.
Yes, no, I'm just running off, Chair. We are having a lot of projects that are in design engineering stage, and yes, there have also been about 2 months delay in terms of the progress to bring those forward to fruition. But we're hoping that we will be able to catch up with us now going back into level 4, or rather going back into opening the construction sites as well as the construction industry as it were. And we hoping that we can augment the presentation, as you see it now, as we basically prepared this one yesterday, to give all the facts and figures and the fact sheet for each project, particularly those that are catalytic, to include all the employment numbers, as well as the actual pictorial view of how those projects will look like once completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to ask Moshe Matlohi, the port manager, to please take us through his presentation. This is the second last presentation, and then we'll then proceed to Q&A after Brendan. So Moshe?
Yeah, Neville.
Yeah.
Neville.
Yes.
Neville.
Neville.
Yes. I think Tammy did say before his presentation that it was not according to our expectations, and I do request that even though other colleagues, their presentations might not be into the expectations, but they try and as they talk, they respond to the questions that we posed, because the issue is not about for us to know how many projects you have where, but it's about how is that going to help us? How is that going to create jobs? How are we going to get jobs from that? How are the SMMEs going to be supported from those projects? Tammy, I just come back from Otugela. People there have been without water for 3 weeks. So you're still going to answer that question. So that's why I need practical things. I don't want your slides, you know me, I'm not person for business plans and documents. I just want practical things about how do we get things going? How do we respond to the questions that are here before us? Thanks.
Thank you, MEC, for that guide. Moshe, if you could please take cognizance of MEC's directive, and if we can implement that in your presentation. Thank you. Moshe, I will hand over to you.
Good evening, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Moshe, you're audible. Please start.
Thank you very much. MEC, thank you for allowing us an opportunity. I must upfront indicate that we got the invitation, that is me, late yesterday. So without really getting the brief, but what we have put together here are the projects that we are undertaking in KZN, in the main focusing at Durban and Richards Bay. If you're looking at the slides, I will tell you about the 5-year investment programs in Durban and the same as in Richards Bay. In Durban, we're looking at spending about 16 billion rands between this financial year and 2024. The biggest project here is the bed deepening. This, we should have been halfway through it, were it not because of Paul O'Sullivan, who raised the issues around how the procurement was done. But after investigation, no issues were found on that aspect. We've gone out to market. We're busy now with adjudication. That process has been slowed down by the COVID-19. But really, we're looking at having 6.5 billion rands on that project coming through. And in terms of the jobs that we're expecting to create from that project is about 7,500 temporal jobs to create the construction. Then post that with the impact that it's going to have on the economy, we're looking at 18,000 jobs. If you're looking at the entire supply chain, because of how it's going to optimize things in the port of Durban. To support that, we've already started buying new equipment for TPT. We're expecting delivery now in June, and the assembly, therefore, of those pieces of equipment. But we are worried that the lockdown might affect the arrival of the international experts to come and work on the assembly part of it due to them coming from high-risk countries in Europe. But we are going to look at approaching government and see if a special dispensation can be made in that regard. We also are looking at buying 6 new tugs, but these are going to be shared amongst all the ports. Durban and Richards Bay will be receiving, and some will go to the Eastern Cape. And if you are looking at other equipment that we're intending to buy, is the helicopter to augment the fleet that we have so that we can improve the service level that we are giving to customers and make sure that as the weather has changed, we're not really dependent on the pilot boats to bring the vessels in. We're spending 328 million rands on improving the fire suppression system in Island View. As you know, that is a petrochemical cluster. We already are having companies working there, and it's going to take about 4 years to complete the entire upgrade of the fire suppression system. If we're looking at Richards Bay, we're looking at 12.9 billion rands. And I must say these numbers could change slightly because we are busy now looking at the post-COVID environment and looking at the viability of projects and say, what do we need to do so that we can have that necessary impact? Richards Bay, we're busy upgrading the port infrastructure, road network and water network in the port. We've seen a number of cases where we're losing water. I mean, even last week we had 2 major pipe bursts at Richards Bay, but we're looking at spending that 2.6 billion rands to revamp the port so that it's in a position to augment what the ITZ is doing. Conversion of bed 702, this is something that has been coming for some time to say, can we not look at that bed and create possibly capacity to handle extra cargo for the port of Richards Bay, and also to create capacity for emerging miners, because we know RBCT is not interested in giving their excess capacity to emerging miners when the price of coal is good. It's only when the price is down are they making that capacity available. We're trying to create this capacity for new entrants. I'll take you to show you a little bit of detail in terms of what we're intending doing, so that you can appreciate that 6.5 billion I was talking about. This is what we're going to be doing in the Port of Durban. If you're looking at the top picture, top right, this is the current environment where we can only take 2 vessels at a time. The idea is increase it from 914 indicated in yellow to over here to 1.2 kilometers length, meaning that you can begin to have 3 vessels docking. This is going to have a big impact in terms of how much time the cargo gets to hit the market in South Africa or overseas, because it means every day we'll have an opportunity of taking 1 more vessel that is working outside. The next big project is the Salisbury infill. This is frustrating, Chairperson, if I may mention. We really have been between pillar and post, where Department of Public Works and the Defense Department really are not in agreement in terms of giving us the Salisbury part to expand Pier 1. We have then taken a decision that we are going to do the partial infill of Pier 1 or Salisbury. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, slightly moving, bottom left. We are going to create a 1 million TEU capacity, which will then help to deal with the issues of congestion. And the amount that we're going to spend at some stage, the 19 billion rands, will come down because of the reduced footprint, but it's still going to create an additional capacity. We have not agreed in terms of saying who's going to operate that. It's a conversation that we're going to have, which could then talk to issues of private participation in the space, but that decision has not yet been arrived at. It's an option that we're looking at. The DDOP is still on the cards, but if you're looking at it, our timelines really are not in the immediate future. We're looking in the late 2030s. That's when we think the DDOP should be coming on stream. Right now, we're looking at optimizing what we have and really create capacity within the existing system to make sure that we get the economy going. We have not yet set up money, but we are busy procuring the remaining part of the old airport, which was owned by SAA as part of what SAA is going through. We are trying also to come to the party and buy the remaining portions so that they can have some cash to deal with their challenges. There will be a lot of civil work that will be coming in after we run the bed deepening. The stacks at DCT are collapsing, so we're going to spend money in rehabilitating the stacks, and that is going to create a number of jobs during that period of about from 2022 to 2027. About 5 years, there will be a lot of job coming, but when we do the revised presentation, because we got the briefing late yesterday, we'll then be indicating how many jobs are we expecting to push through there and how the emerging companies and the new entrants into the system are going to be accommodated. We'll do that when we present next time. Going to Richards Bay, as I've mentioned, of key interest in Richards Bay really maybe is about this one, the gas network project, where we're at stage 2, where we have validated the gas demand in Richards Bay in line with the pronouncement by the national government that Richards Bay and Gukha should be the hubs for gas in order to help the country to have alternative supply of energy. We now have identified the gaps within the scope of work that has been done, having validated the demand. We have gone to market using the International Financial Cooperation procurement process to see if we cannot get foreign direct investors to come into the space and assist us. Then we busy with pre-feasibility studies that had been delayed, where we wanted to align with the Department of Mineral and Energy. That's where we're at Richards Bay. That's where my 8 minutes end. But of importance, Chairperson and MEC, what we really want to work towards is to improve our collaboration with the two ITs, one at Richards Bay and one at Duet Trade, but we have been engaging both of them. We also are looking at finding opportunities of extending some of the regime governing the quick response to business requests to the port, more so when it comes to ship repair business in the Port of Durban and the businesses that are there that really have a potential of being big businesses, but our processes are cumbersome, and we're trying to work with Hamish and others to say how can we improve that space so that we can be agile in the same way as ITZ in assisting those businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moshe, for that presentation. We now will take the last presenter, again, taking the guidance from the MEC in terms of how you need to deal with your presentation. Brandon, you can then take us through from Public Works.
Trying to get my share screen there, the other screen is still on.
Hi, Brandon, we're struggling to hear you. Can you just... Brandon, do you have two devices open at the same time? If you do, I'm going to suggest you switch one off. Are you with us, Brandon? Brandon, are you with us? Okay, we seem to have lost Brandon there. I still see him on the screen. Technical team, there seems to be a challenge with Brandon's mic.
Brendan, can I make a suggestion that you log out and log back in?
Okay, if we can come out of this presentation mode, and then I believe we need to go straight into question and answers, just so that we can then expedite the engagements now. There's a number of questions that have been posed as a result of the presentations that we have received. But I think most importantly, from all the presenters, I think the critical question that has come through from our Honorable MEC is on implementation. You know, how far are we in terms of implementation? It's all the business plans are beautiful, and we hear all the plans that are there, but where is the implementation? How do we ensure that these projects are unlocked to realize job creation in a fairly quick manner? I think if I can then just request you to immediately respond to that. I think I'm going to go straight to Umgeni Water. If you can respond to that, as well as the issues in Portugal.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I must say that all the projects that are currently in implementation which is 2 billion rands worth of projects. They are all basically having a lot of employment creation associated with it. The latest one being a 400 million rands project in Bopomeni. The MEC and colleagues will remember that we had a sewer spillage, but that project was already on tender adjudication stage when we had that sewer spillage into Mid-Madam. So it's a project that will rehabilitate all the infrastructure. And already plus minus 147 people within the locality of Bopomeni have been employed. And also we have set aside 10% of the project's value for the local entrepreneurship, while the other 25% is for small SMMEs that have undergone a process of selection through a tender process within Umgeni Water. But a number of other projects, similar projects, are also tailor-made, are also structured in that manner, and they're in implementation. The big project, Chairperson, that will unlock a lot of potential is the 4.9 billion rand project in Luam Komazi. That's one, Ma'am MEC, we are going into tender. We're supposed to go into tender in March, but we halted because of COVID-19, still because the construction industry went to shut down. We are going to go into tender hopefully in mid-May, and we're going to be start advertising. The first one will be a 600 million rands pipeline laying project, and then the others will follow, including a 1.67 billion rands dam projects that will also do. As far as Utsugela is concerned, it's a bit of a complicated issue that I wish to positive around this at some point. But basically, as Umgeni Water, we are running only three plants there. Utsugela as a district has 14 plants, which is 14 distribution points. We are running 3 of them, which is basically Ezakeni that supplies the whole township of Zakeni and the eastern side of Ladysmith, as well as the Olifantscope that supplies the whole area of the former Indaga area, and then a little bit of Utsugela Estate, which also augments the Olifantscope as far as supply is concerned. Chairperson, those systems are running well. We've had issues in the past as far as community protests, where as community then protest, they then come and disrupt services within those plants. But right now, they're all operating optimally. The others that are, the other 11 that are still run by Utsugela as a district, we are in negotiation with Utsugela as a district to assist them by taking those over and then optimizing them the same manner we have in the other 3. The biggest challenge, though, is the non-payment for services within the citizenry of Utsugela, which therefore makes Utsugela not even afford to operate and maintain some of those plants, the 11 plants that they are currently maintaining, including a chairperson even servicing the bill that we issue them every month for the work that we've done in the water that they would have bought from us as Umgeni Water. But because we are government to government, we are always trying to seek the IGR process and also being very sympathetic towards their plight, even though they have not paid us for the last, MEC, if I can say, for the last, since July last year, they've never paid us a single cent. But we understand their plight, and therefore we're working together with them to see how do we implement the revenue enhancements. So there are areas as a result of the non-payment and the issue of the affordability by Utsugela to operate and maintain all their plants that are basically not getting the full service, simply because the plants are just not in a good state for them to run effectively, particularly those that are run by them. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Tammy. I think the other point is related to some of your, projects that can support industry. We go back to the issue of Utsugela, and where there is a challenge to support industry in terms of water supply. I know that you've mentioned Ezakeni, and we are aware of the issues around the community protests, etc. But how do we ensure that we grow the pie so that we are able to attract new investments into that area that can also benefit from access to water?
I think, Chairperson, the biggest issue or the biggest hurdle that we need to jump over, which we are very much working closely, including with the Department of Provincial Treasury through MEC Pillay, is to see how do we take over all the other infrastructure, so that then we can, as I've said, augment them as well as optimize them so they operate optimally to supply the likes of about Denlo, the likes of about Nestle, etc., who are currently having an intermittent supply as far as water is concerned. So we are basically negotiations, therefore, with together. But as I've said, the biggest issue is they do not want to take on more responsibility through Umgeni and not being able to service the debts that will arise as a result. Hence, we need to work on the revenue and China enhancement strategy, which we have already tabled to the escorts of this world, Escort Vienna, Denlop, and them. We have workshopped it with them so that then it assists Utsuela to get enough revenues for them to then service them better.
Okay, Sizophuza Edtea, then we'll see how we strategize around this. Moshe, if you can come in here. I mean, you've mentioned quite a number of projects again from the port, but again, it sounds, very good plans and good, and you're talking about the horizon of 2030. MEC's request and basically wish is to see how we move those projects from 2030 forward, so that we are able to then implement those projects fairly quickly. What is your response in respect to that, and where can we then ensure that we unlock some of the challenges that you're experiencing in order to ensure that the delivery of these projects, because that's the only way post-COVID we can then engender economic development and stimulate the economy of the province if we are able to ensure the immediate implementation of these projects.
Chairperson, I think, look, the projects that are going to happen immediately, Bedipning is live right now. The DDOP, which is long-term, is really about the funding aspect, where we say we don't have enough in our kitty to fund DDOP. But then we say what we need to do in the interim is really to resolve the impasse that was there between Department of Public Works and Defense. Because, we have lost about 3 years where they agree that we can have the land, we proceed, then the new chief comes in, then they've changed, such that we've taken a decision that we're moving ahead with that one as well, that let's do the partial infill instead of the whole thing, because we're losing money, and we have set aside money for that. That one we're progressing enough. For me, I think really it would be the question, this is my personal opinion now, of saying, as part of dealing with the investor strike from South Africans who have money, we need to start talking about those other projects where we then say, look, here's the potential of a mega project here. Do we have takers there instead of relying on our finances to do some of the projects? Let's look at what is provided for, to open up space for people who will come and get concessions to come and work, which is why we're beginning to talk to the IDZs to say, we think we like their investment drive strategy, because they seem to have a little bit of flexibility when it comes to dealing with investors. For us, we really have been in a straight jacket kind of environment where everything else, you have to check what is competition doing, and you really don't make an impact on the economy. But I think if we were to get the assistance, extension of the ITZ dispensation to the 2 ports, we are going to get quick short-term impact. Like your South African shipyards, we can assist them, Domec and Elgin Brown, because they really are struggling to compete with other players internationally. And if you're looking at the ship repair business, it's a huge job creator. And for me, I say we need to give that cluster a dispensation for them to compete better, because they're competing with companies that are subsidized by the state. But here we can use maybe the vehicle that is there within DTI to see if we cannot help them to compete and have a better chance.
Well, I'm glad, Moshe, you're speaking about that, because that's the kind of discussions that we are interested in really at this kind of a forum. We're interested in a discussion that is aiming at identifying those industries that can be quick for us to realize the jobs. We're talking about the shipbuilding industries that it's an opportunity for us here in KZN as a port city that we've been talking about the shipbuilding and the oceans economy forever, and nothing has been moving. And probably it's about time that we reallocate some of this funding from that red tape that you're talking about between the army and the public works, and leave that project because it's not moving. Let's move the money where on the projects that we think we can realize quick gains, because we want our own ships to move the goods in and out, since all the borders and all the countries have had their borders closed. And that is the project that we know can realize thousands of jobs from the young people who can be trained as shipbuilders. The last time we moved with the shipbuilding projects was the time some few years ago. And the oceans economy, I mean, that project was launched here in KZN. But if I was to tell you how much of realization of that project, we can count how many jobs have been realized through that. I wouldn't be able to even count a few busload of people that have been employed, through that. If you look at the Richards Bay port, huge opportunities that are there. And we can realize a number of jobs. So I mean, for us, it's about, let's forget about those projects that have been sitting there in your books for a long time with the red tape and moving back and forward. Let's look at those industries that can be able to make us realize quick gains to recover our economy post the lockdown and post the COVID-19. Let's see what are those industries that can stimulate our economy, that can make us ensure that small businesses are able to participate in the economy. In the property industry that we're talking about, let's look at what is the role of government in the property industry. There's a lot of small participants in the property industry. And in the property industry, a lot of people can participate in there. And government, yes, does have a lot of infrastructure funding that is available, but it's all locked up in a lot of bureaucracy. And I think earlier on, when we started talking about, I think it was Rendra that was talking about the issues of environment and the issues of environment applications and all the red tape that we spoke about the other day. Yes, we are not saying we should break the law, but how do we ensure that instead of a file that goes around to somebody's desk for 6 months, instead of having that file goes around within a week, and realize all those applications so that we can unlock the potential of those projects. And seated here, having listened to all the monies and all the dreams that are there, the government does have resources, but it's about how do we as bureaucracy move and realize that it's not business as usual. It's about the lives of our people out there. It's about the economy of this country that has been bashed. It's about the economy that is not going to be able to trade with some of our foreign investors. It's about this economy that our investors that have aimed to invest from outside of this country, they are not going to be able to invest. Let them see what is the potential for us to ensure that we utilize the skills that we have internally. Let's see how can we utilize all these potential, all this creative, capacity that we have of our small and medium enterprises to ensure that we reprioritize our project to the areas where we know that we can realize a major or bigger returns. If you look at a project like the smelter project, at some stage we spoke about the smelter project, and the problem there was about electricity. We spoke about at some stage about the green economy. Hey, isn't it time now we should be talking about the green economy and that project of the smelter, so that it can now kickstart, and then we can get the economy and independent producers, because the laws have changed. So I think the idea for us to open this kind of a discussion is so that we can say, you've given us your bank balance, you've given us all these projects that have been there, and some of them, as you correctly say, they've been there from the time when Sister Primary School and till to date. Can't we change now and look at what can be realized given the opportunities that are now arising as a result of this COVID-19 that is within us? And I think it is possible. It is possible that with the how it is possible that we can bring some of the projects quicker within the market. It is possible that we can reconfigure and promote those industries that can give us quicker returns. It is possible, Sandra, that we are too told in KZN. We're not even talking about, don't talk about choice anymore. We're too told. Let's talk about the project that can give us quicker yields. And I'm happy that you know, Sandra, you are already talking about the projects that can be brought forward, the projects that can make us realize more jobs, and some of them that need a red tape to be cut, and have somebody said we must have a green carpet or a red carpet or something to realize those projects. And those are the kind of discussions we're seeking from you as the leadership in some of the strategic economies in our government. The accessibility of funding is an area, and the mentorship is an area that a lot of processes have been put in place to support the small and medium enterprises. We've got the funding available. There is as well the issue of equipment. If we talk about equipment, Sunral, we were talking about a Bell. We've got Bell just down the road from here in the northern parts of our KZN. And if that Bell can be unlocked to create more of that equipment, that Bell can create 1,000 more jobs instead of going to buy more of that equipment outside of the country, making our money leave our country and getting those machinery that don't even last, you know, a year, and they break down and you can't even repair them. So the kind of discussions that we'd like really to see are practical projects that can make us realize a quick returns, a quick turnaround. And there are those projects that you spoke about already. And there are infrastructure projects in construction industry. Honestly, it's one of those industries that can make us realize quicker jobs and quicker returns of the economy in KZN. And I do believe that we've got the potential and we've got a capacity to do it. We just have to do it because there's a lot of SMMEs within the construction industry here in KZN. And the construction industry is one of those industries that's got a huge value chain, be they transportation, be they, cement, be they a lot of other things that makes a lot of people participate in that economy. So that's a kind of a discussion really that we would like to promote, and the kind of questions that we would like to see answering within the discussions that we are having. Otherwise, we really appreciate that you've exposed us to a very good type of work that you are doing, which is very much appreciated between each and every one of you. But the question is, how can we turn around those projects and make them realize the quick returns for our economy in KZN, so as to make sure that we recover and our people can get jobs and we can have sustainable economy that can make our people be able to have proper livelihood. And that's a question that I would like each and every one of you probably to answer for me.
MEC. If I may come in, thank you very much for the feedback. I think really it's hitting on the right notes in terms of what we have to look at. With the Salisbury infield, we have already moved on. Like we're saying, the defense team we're seeing is not going to help us. So we're doing the infield, the light infield, which is necessary for the Port of Durban to reclaim the spot that it has lost internationally from number 1 to number 3. So it's going to cover that. On the dry dock side as well, what I did not put in here, we have met with MSC, where they've given us a commitment that if we were to sort out the dry dock, they will give us 10 ships per annum to repair, which is a lot of work if you're looking at the number of people that will be having 10 ships guaranteed to come here. You're looking at about 10 months worth of jobs. So we're looking at that. For Pagisa, we have now commissioned the second inner casing, which will give us a little bit of work, but we need a new dry dock. This dry dock, we have already set up an engineer and we have identified an area where we should have it. Again, we want to go to private sector and say, are there takers who want to put in a dry dock in the Port of Durban? If not, we should then do it ourselves, knowing that it's got this impact. But I'm taking these notes, taking them back to translate so that in our sessions, MEC, we still are going to arrange a session where we sit down with you to take you through what we're doing. We can work on those issues because they are really important. We have to change. Otherwise, we're going to sit with high levels of unemployment and increasing crime. Thank you very much for the feedback. I'm happy with your feedback. Thank
you. Chair, MEC, from Sanral's side, just a quick feedback. Hearing the calls of the people of the province, if there wasn't a disturbance from COVID-19, we would have already awarded projects that would have been to the value, I think I counted about 6 billion. So we were on the process of awarding those contracts. So the COVID-19 has actually meant that those awards are disturbed by, call it 2 months or so. So not much will be lost in terms of the progress or what we have planned. And talking about what I mentioned earlier, that we have looked at a whole value chain. We have looked at the upstream and downstream suppliers or stakeholders that, as you put it, MEC, that they are all augmenting the construction industry. For instance, Bell Equipment, we have actually signed an MOU with them. The MOU is for making it easier for our SMMEs to either lease to buy or lease from them. So those are the typical arrangements that we have put in place. It's not just only Bells, but other South African-based yellow equipment suppliers. So we have visited the Bell, their whole shop there. We have met with them and do all sort of things. So the next phase that we have discussed with them is that along this corridor of N2, N3 within eThekwini and Mgungundlovu municipalities, we're gonna be setting up some sort of like walk-in shops or walk-in what I don't know what to call it actually, but for easy accessibility by the small companies, that we will say this is our training ground. We will meet here every day. this is, we are allocating this as your office, but this is where we're training you every day. And next to that office, we have Bell here, we have Ballo Worlds here. They are also here packaging the work so that the consultation, you don't have to drive to Richards Bay to meet them. They are here. So we are planning that whole package for smaller companies as an offering. So this year was actually their year, is a D-Day year for Sanral to put this on the table. Thank you, MEC.
KZN Department of Transport.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that feedback. I think we appreciate the feedback, and indeed, I think Sanral has been very consistent in terms of attending our Economic Council as well, I must say. The reason I'm raising the bell, it's because it's one of those companies that had to retrench quite a number of people because they were not producing enough equipment. And if we needed them to employ more people, we need them to produce. And if we need them to produce, we need to buy. And we need to buy local so that we can get them to produce. So that's why I was raising. It's an example, and I'm glad that you can see the kind of that example, because it's about the ripple effect that are making that. It's not the only ones. Then there's a lot of other ones that if you buy local, you're actually opening other economies within your own province, so that people then can get jobs, can have more production can happen, and you can have more people getting employed, as opposed to every time you turn around, people are getting retrenchments, and we cannot afford a single retrenchment at this particular time. And honestly, that is why we really need to all work and ensure that every project, every cent is realized. Yes, Moshe, I agree. We will meet. We had a good meeting in last year in December with the minister as well, and we left it at the time when there was an assignment that your team and everybody else had to do. So we need to get back and ensure that we see how far we've gone with that assignment and really get things moving. We've got a huge potential for our automotive there, for things to get moving in our ports. And we are correct to reclaim our space. And by reclaiming our space, it means there's a huge value chain that can open for jobs within that industry on its own, transport industry, food industry, construction industry, lots and lots of industry. Of course, we're going to be clamping down on those illegal and illicit goods as well.
Thank you, MEC. If we can also just get comments from KZN Department of Transport.
Thank you, Neville. Thank you, MEC. I think for us as Department of Transport, it is vital for us to be able to have plans that are able to respond quicker. I think as transport, when we spend close to 6 billion a year on infrastructure, I mean, that goes year to year. But the biggest challenge is us being able to respond quicker, especially maintenance, or for communities to be able to move in and out in terms of access. And I think that is what we need to enhance and make sure that we improve in that. But in terms of developing SMMEs, I think that's been happening for a while, and we have a lot of poverty alleviation programs. I think last year we introduced this youth program where we employed 3,000 youth to assist in terms of maintenance of our roads. And as I said, right now we are actually gearing up to get those back into with this level 4 lockdown to come back to start working. But obviously, we need to look at the changes.
Apologies, Celo. Your mic is very, very low. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait. How is it now? Sorry. How's my volume now?
It's still the same, but I think you can continue.
Yes. So I think, as I was trying to say, that for each department right now is to be able to reprioritize their projects to the projects that sector departments seem as important, especially when some sector departments, when able to respond to such pandemic situations, we need to be able to reprioritize and be able to take care of such to be able to provide infrastructure for that. So in actual going forward with the stimulation of the economy, we had projects that were gunned to actually do that, but we need to reprioritize so that we actually value for money and put it on projects that are important right now post the pandemic. So as I said, when we open, we have projects close to 3 billion that are ready to actually be on site. So we are ready, but we are also ready to engage with other sector departments in reprioritizing our plans so that we push where money is needed right now in this where we are right now in KZN. So basically pushing money where it's needed the most, reemphasizing our plans. I think, yeah, for us, enhancing our projects to be able to respond on time in terms of communities, and then be able to reprioritize our projects to support other sectors to be able to stimulate the economy of KZN. Thank you.
Thank you, Celo. I think, again, just tapping on to what MEC was saying, it's good that you're reprioritizing, but we need to know what is it that you're reprioritizing and how do we get those projects running and brought forward. I think that's really the message that's coming from MEC, that we need to see what it is that you're talking about. We appreciate the fact that you're reprioritizing, but you need to show what it is, and in the short term, how is that going to be moved as quickly as possible to ensure that we stimulate the economy? Okay, so I think that's food for thought for you and the team. And I think what would be important is for us to then table that and get back to the MEC to show what it is that we're from a transport perspective, what you're reprioritizing and implementing immediately. And I think the message from the MEC is clear. Those projects that that we used to see when we were in primary school that you still have in your books, that's part of the reprioritization. If they're not up to now still not working, deal with those that will work, that'll create jobs and that'll stimulate the economy of the province. And just finally, in terms of I know Hamish, I think you're the last one for input.
Thanks, Neville. Yeah, look, I did try and cover it in my presentation. Just to respond, we have two projects that are going immediate. The one is Trade Zone 2. As soon as lockdown's finished under level 4, we can begin that as a civils project. We want to get that done as while we've got this quiet time, I suppose, of COVID, so that we're ready for the, what we're talking about, the reindustrialization. We've achieved an excess of 30% CPG on that project, as well as also on Agri Zone 2, and both are basically ready to move forward. So I think we're going to have a stimulatory effect on the small and medium-sized companies, civils companies in particular. Maybe it ties back to a lot of what's been spoken about, yellow equipment and others, because one is a major civils project. So hopefully we'll keep up our side of things here. So I think the stimulatory effect will come on both, keeping the economic activity happening, the construction happening, getting projects ahead of schedule. Similarly with Earth 650, it's right near the end of the procurement process. So I think we've got 3 very immediate projects which we will really look to fast track now that we've got some flexibility under level 4. And then obviously ASP, spoken about that, the MEC spoken about the automotive industry. That's a major priority to get it through these final regulatory hurdles and get that moving. And I think the post-COVID environment should allow us to do that. So I think that's where our key short-term priorities will be. And then to work on the broader sector development stuff with TRKZN and others for the post-COVID environment.
Thank you so much, Hamish. I think just before we ask MEC to come in, Mr. Msiwa, any comments from your side? If you can unmute your mic. Dennis, can you assist just to unmute Mr. Msiwa?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. No, good afternoon, MEC and the fellow panelists. There are quite a number of things that perhaps need to be happening. Naturally, the first one is actually sort of to change the tone in our discussions, in our planning discussion, as the MEC has indicated, to actually focus on specificity and not move very much on a generality. Those discussions, I will also be taking them back into the Planning Commission in the work that we do in assisting in the implementation of the PGDP. But first and foremost, it's very, very important that the inputs that have come in from organizations like the Masters Builders Association, they've indicated quite a number of blockages that are currently taking place. Naturally, the unlocking of blockages is going to be a process in itself, but that should not stop us from going down to the easy hanging fruits within this. And I would also just implore that all our investors, role players, infrastructure units, we all move with utmost speed in terms of the work that we need to do to deliver and release this economy from the cripple that it has of COVID-19. That's in short what we would I would put in. It's been quite an instructive exercise. It's opened up quite a lot of areas, but it's now moving beyond the talk and really getting down to practical sort of action. Get the doables quickly on the table, and then let's move on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think it brings us to now the end where MEC will then conclude and then give us our marching orders. Honorable MEC.
Is Dokin not is it not Dokin and Msiwa the co-conveners of this platform?
It's Charenda and myself that are the co-conveners, and naturally.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And also, can I also extend MEC Nkonyeni's apology? She was also expected to participate, but she's busy preparing for the provincial command meeting, which is tomorrow. So she couldn't join us today. So her apologies for not being with us. Well, my parting shot really is just to thank everybody for participating today, and just to commit that for us it is to realize that we need to look beyond the COVID pandemic. We need to look beyond the stresses and the frustrations that we are facing right now. We need to look at what are the quick gains, what are the quick wins that we can realize. And indeed, there is a silver lining, I believe, that is being provided by the situation. And the fact that the borders are closed means that there are things that we need to produce ourselves that we might have been produced by other people outside of this country. And the lessons that we've learned from some crises and over the years, the history tells us that in the midst of crisis, you usually do find solutions. And I think one of the areas as well that I haven't seen coming out within this discussion of infrastructure and construction is the use of the IT and the ICT and the technology. And I think this industry is one of those industries that can use technology for ease and making work quicker, and actually turning situation around using technology. And I know that these days you don't need to go on the road, and I'm sure Sandra don't go to the road anymore and stand with that tripod thing and look on the road anymore. You can do that thing on the, you know, on the computer, and you can tell the computer to tell you you know, everything about that road. You can actually print everything using the technology. And I think those are some of the areas that give us an opportunity to utilize technology to speed up the deliverables that we are talking about. So for me, we need to create that capacity amongst ourselves to bridge that divide that we've been sharing right through this webinars, the divide that is there between ourselves who are in government on this side of the table and our communities who are on the side of the table, who are looking to us for solutions and responses to the challenges that they are facing, to the red tape that they are facing, to the questions that they are posing to us, and to the fact that we need to be people driven. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of those communities that we are serving and say, if this was me, would I be utilizing this money this way? Will I be wasting these resources if this was my money? Will I be wasting the money the way we are wasting government resources sometimes? So we really need to start interrogating some of our processes. We need to start really re-looking at the way we do business as government. And I think we do have potential. We have good leaders in you. Your presentations have shown that you know what you are doing. You are expert in your own right. But I think there is a need now to adjust and adapt to the situation that is facing us, to the new challenges that are presented by the COVID-19, and be able to make better choices and be able to be more efficient in the way we deliver resources, and be able to utilize those resources in a better way. And I don't believe in us throwing money everywhere, but we need to be able to utilize the money where we can be able to get more for the money that we are spending. So we need to make better choices for the money that we are spending. We need to retrain ourselves as well to be able to adjust and adapt to the situation that we are that is facing us. So I wish to thank you very much, everybody, for participating. Thank you for your time. I know our facilitators, our co-conveners, it's been a long time today. and to everybody who's participating in all these webinars, and to our secretariats and our IT team on the background who's helping us to be able to be listened to in all the social media channels, to all of people that are listening to us out there. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'm sure that we will try and improve all the time. But please keep on sending those questions, send those chats. We will follow those chats up. We will send those questions to all our panel members, and we'll ensure that they do respond to your questions and they do respond to your chats. And once more, thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, MEC. Good night.
Siyabonga, MEC.
Siyabonga.
Siyabonga kakhulu. Good night.
Thank you, MEC.
Thank you, MEC.
Siyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you, MEC.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.
Ciao. Funa manzi wena, Thomas. Funa manzi wena.
Hayi, zaletha ma. Sokhuluma eceleni.
Akho eceleni, sifuna amanzi thina, sifuna amanzi.
Azofika, MEC, siyabonga.